We begin with John today. Thanks for your suggestions about the benefits of riding outside. My question is, when riding hills, what are advantages of staying in the saddle versus standing up while climbing?
Oh, great question, John. So when I started riding, basically when I started multi-sport, I learned a lot from riding with other cyclists. And they always encouraged me to stay in the saddle. The benefit from riding in the saddle is you could really work on your pedal stroke. There's 4 phases of the pedal stroke: the upstroke, over the top, downstroke, and then the bottom. Those aren't the correct terminologies, but you're able to work on, the full range of motion in the pedal stroke, engaging those hamstrings as you pull back and up, and engaging the quads as you go over the top and down. And you don't necessarily get that when you're standing. Yet at the same time, when you do stand on a hill, you're going to be able to generate more power. So a lot of it does depend on the grade of the hill, how steep is it, and then also how long you're going to be riding uphill. If it's a long, mile or so or more of climbing, you're going to stay seated for the majority of it. And then maybe as you're cresting the hill, stand up, grind through it, get over the hill, and then you have the downhill to coast on. So there are pros and cons of each. When you are standing, again, you're creating more drag. So you're going to be less aerodynamic, depending on the wind. If the wind's at your face and you're standing, that could potentially slow you down because of the drag of standing into the wind. So there's benefits to both. It just a lot depends on your strengths and weaknesses. One thing you do want to keep in mind is when you are riding uphill, you're mindful of your cadence. I used to work with athletes in person riding hills, and I would see that they were so new. Sometimes there's a tendency to overspin. So they'd be in their biggest or their easiest gear called the granny gear, and they would just be spinning their wheels, not really going anywhere. So when you're thinking about riding uphill, think about the cadence and think about, having some tension at a comfortable cadence. And most times a comfortable cadence, I'm going to say for most people, is about 70 RPMs. If it's so steep that you're under 60 RPMs, that's probably going to be an indication that you're going to stand up, because once you get to 50 or below, sometimes it's just hard to turn the cranks, and it's just going to be a lot easier to stand up.
Yeah, and watching your power as well, because when you get into those bigger, harder gears and you're climbing, you're going to be putting out more power. It depends on how long you're going to be doing that. Based on your goals for that race, you can really take a lot out of your legs. And there's also the question, Wendy, of aero position, staying in the saddle versus getting out of the aero position and climbing. I've heard maybe there's a number, maybe 6 or 7 miles per hour, maybe 8 miles per hour. Once you get below that, your aero position doesn't matter, so you can sit up, so you don't have to worry so much about drag or having the wind stop you. So when you talked about getting up and not being so aerodynamic when you're climbing, when you get to a certain speed, that shouldn't be a factor.
Right, and that's true. And I was just thinking about if I'm always aware if I have a headwind or a tailwind. If I have a tailwind going uphill, I want to be as big as possible so that it's pushing me more uphill. Same with even on a flat. If I have a tailwind and it's flat, I'm not so worried about being aero. I just want the wind to push me as much as it can. And there are times where I can stay aero if it's not too steep. I'm just going to say maybe it's like less than 6% grade, you can stay aero and really go at a steady effort where it's kind of a false flat, maybe 4%, maybe 2 to 4% is considered a false flat, where you feel like you're climbing, but it's not too hard. You don't need to get out of the saddle and you can stay aero.